it in a way where the average person with like an average income, you can go own a couple acres. You can go do it.
Hey, it's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, I promise you, you will want to get your pen and your paper out. I know, I still got pen and paper. I know, it's the age thing. You can see it in the hair if you're close enough. But today, I have Matt Forbes from Harbor Trust, and he is going to explain what almost kind of, broke the internet in real estate, at least when I saw it. Daniel Pierce, a friend of ours, aired his company Harbor Trust and how they sell land. And I mean from acres to, even smaller parcels, but they do it at a price that a lot of you, even in these tough times, will be able to afford. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kellen, thanks for having me. Really happy to be here.
Thank you. And I just want to throw it out there so people, because some folks saw the deals and they said, how can I buy acres that I've never even seen? It's on the border of Mexico and Texas, and it's, $5,000 or $5,500. Is this a real thing? And do you own the land outright?
Yeah. So the answer is we do own the land outright, right? It's a real estate niche that almost no one knows about. There's probably a couple hundred of us who do this. And, the model is really simple, right? We find land that the owners don't want to own anymore, right? So mom and dad bought a piece of land, or dad did and didn't tell mom, and they passed away and they gave it to their kids. And the kids are like, I don't want 10 acres in the middle of nowhere in Texas, right? I don't want to pay the taxes on that. But because, the retail price is 10 or 15 or 20 grand, you can't go get a real estate agent to go sell it because they're not going to make enough money. And now you're stuck with it. And then year after year after year, you pay taxes and you hate it a little bit more until you get a letter in the mail from me. And I say, look, here's who I am. I'm a land investor. I'm not going to offer you a retail price for this. I'm going to offer you something that's, crazy cheap. But if you want a few $1,000 for it, I'll buy it and I'll pay the back taxes and off we go. And, every day we get people who return our mail saying, you know what? I'd way rather have $3,000 in cash than pay the $400 a year in taxes. So send me the check and let's go. And so we buy them for cash, myself, and I have a bunch of investors who I work with. And we turn around and we actually sell them on the internet. But the crazy thing we do is we sell them on terms, so owner financing. And so what that allows to do is really serve a whole group of people who, don't have $20,000 to go buy that piece of property, but they do have $500 down and, $200 a month or $150 a month or whatever it is. And so we'll sell them on terms for, 90 months or 50 months or 110 or whatever it is. And we're the bank. We keep it really, really easy. There are some people who do what I do who charge insurance or like interest. We don't do that. We don't really believe in it. Frankly, it's a pain in the butt with the IRS. And so that's it. We advertise on Facebook. That's how Danielle found us. And she scooped up a great property. And we were blessed when she did a video. We didn't even really know who she was. And all of a sudden, she broke my website. And she broke it twice with all of her fans. So it's been a crazy, couple of months here at the company.
Now, that is great. And, she did that, I don't know, just to do it. I represent influencers, and I could say if you ever want the website to break again, tell influencers like Danielle to, hey, we have a commission referral fee in there. It may not be the biggest, but it's something. And many of them will just run. I mean, the payouts that we do are like, influencers just happy to get that money for mentioning something.
Sure.
So, just put that in the back.
We'll have to talk about that. I mean, she had almost 5,000 views of that video, and we didn't pay her. We didn't do anything. She came in probably 6 months ago, and she said, hey, I'm looking at this property I see on Facebook. And we're like, yeah, sorry, that's sold. Like you're like 5 days late. And she said, okay, well, just, put me on the mailer list. We're like, okay. And we send out emails, and she saw a very similar property that we had. And she bought it within probably 6 minutes. She's like, I don't want to miss out. So she immediately put the down payment. I mean, we sent the email out at 10, and at 10:04, a down payment was taken. So I'm definitely a fan of the influencer model. We'll have to talk about it for sure.
Awesome, man. I just want to let the audience know, like, well, Kellen, how do you know these properties really exist? I took my own family. I told Matt, right before we started, to Punta Gorda. And, I saw the potential and I really liked the land. And my wife, told me, is this Dave Ramsey approved? And I said, well, I mean, I can buy it cash. I could buy it a lot of different ways. But, she wanted me to think about some building that we're doing elsewhere. And she said, I like it as well. Just let me know kind of where you want to pull that money from. And I'm still kind of just thinking, because I just love that island type vibe. I mean, I'm right by the water as well, but it's different because it's smaller and I like small. So you have these opportunities, in various states. Mm-hmm. What is the niche of this type of real estate? Does it have a name, or can we make up a name right now?
It's just land investing. Some people call it flipping dirt. Some people will buy it super cheap and only sell it for cash. And so that's a good little niche to be in. I think there's a lot of service to the community when you do it on terms. When you flip it for cash, you exclude most of the market, right? Because they don't have 10 or 20 grand or whatever it is. I mean, and you can do this, by the way, with really expensive properties. We don't. But I like the idea that people who have it in their head, there's no way I'm ever going to own property, right? That they can, for $700 or $500 or whatever it is, right? That they can start to own property on a land contract. And I think that that's a good thing for people to do, right? If you live in a place where you've never owned land before, there's something to it. The big man, he's not making any more of this stuff. It's pretty finite at this point, right? And so, the property that you looked at is a little bit different than what we usually have, because it's an infield lot in Florida. There's power at the street. Some of the streets are paved, some aren't. But, that's an up and coming area, right? So you're going to buy that. You're going to make all the appreciation starting the day you put down the down payment, because you own the land contract, right? You have the rights to the property. And so for a lot of people, they like that. And they go, hey, maybe I'll retire to Florida. Maybe I won't. And in 20 years, maybe it's worth more. And it probably will be, because it's Florida, right? Whereas, we have a lot of property out in Colorado and Texas. And the stuff in Texas is like, you drive, and I've been there. You drive to the end of the world, you take a left, you drive another 45 minutes, like, you're here, right? Don't get a flat because there's no AAA and there's no cell phone service. Like, you're going to die, that kind of a place. And the stuff in Colorado is kind of in between, but it's, 5 acres, mountain views. And so we're actually getting a lot of people who are trying to get out of the city and going, hey, I want a place to go, just in case, because it's, times are kind of crazy right now. And so there's a lot of different uses. Most of the time it's, I'm going to take my family, I'm going to go rent an RV, or maybe I have an RV, and I'm going to get out of the city and I'm going to go decompress. There's nobody around. It's quiet. It's peaceful. It's beautiful. I would say that's probably my average buyer for the out west kind of stuff. But yeah, it's good.
Now, with having the land, let's talk about Texas. We had our house in Texas at one point. And, I was all excited being in Lubbock, Texas. And I'm like, oh, man, oil might strike. I'll be the Black Beverly Hillbillies, which a show that, some of the younger audience don't like Beverly Hillbillies. What's that? But, can we get mineral rights? Do you focus on getting land where you can have the mineral rights, or is every state kind of different?
So every state's totally different. Mineral rights, generally speaking, especially in Texas, given all the oil, that stuff was stripped out 30 and 40 and 50 years ago. The likelihood of getting mineral rights to your property in Texas is nil. Right now, you can still put a well in and you can go live there, but we're really talking about the surface area in this community. Mineral right investing is like a whole other kettle of fish, right? That's a whole other thing. And I know a guy who way back he's I don't know, he's like 300 years old. So way back mid, I don't know, 50s, 60s, they bought up water rights in Texas to the big underground aquifers. And although a landowner can still build a well, right, for your own personal use, you couldn't go do that and have 1,000-acre ranch, right? I mean, you would need the actual water rights. And so he made his living on water rights. There's water rights, there's mineral rights. I mean, there's a lot that's going on. Our side of it is definitely, I want to go build a cabin. I hate people. I want to go away. I want to, get away from the world. That's a lot of our buyers are like that.
Okay, and I definitely get that because as you aforementioned, things aren't getting any more simpler. Everything is complicated. Everything is kind of flipped in my mind. I'm like, well, everything that was wrong is right now, and it's just a different time. And so we do investing overseas. My wife is from West Africa, so it makes it a lot easier. And so with not having mineral rights, I found in Texas, if you lived outside of the city, you had more of a chance of getting that. So have you found, like, if you're on the border of Mexico and Texas, are those still stripped, or is there any likelihood where you've seen, a property claim with mineral rights?
I've seen the occasional one. Yeah. Most of the cities are sort of a different ball game. I primarily have land that is pretty far away, very remote in Texas. And that's where, somebody bought, 200 square miles. We're talking 200,000 acres, and they will, they would have stripped away the mineral rights. And then they will sell they will, break up the lots into, 50 acres, 100 acres, 250 acres, that kind of stuff, and then sell them off. And that's kind of what's gone on, right? So when you go out there to West Texas specifically, most of the stuff is unpinned, meaning you don't know where the corners are. There are ranches that have been developed where it is pinned, more like what you would find in a housing development. But there's two things you got to be really smart about if you're going to go buy land. Number one, who are you buying it from? Are they legitimate? Do they actually own the land? Right? That's a big thing. There are people in this space who are not good people, right? And so it's really easy to find out if somebody owns the land. You just simply call the county assessor. It's not hard. You can find the county assessor's phone number in 8 seconds on Google, and you just call them and you say, this is the property. There's usually an APN or a property ID. Think of it as like a social security number for the property, right? And they can go in and they can look on the county records and say, okay, this is who owns it, right? Most of the time, that kind of information is online, but depending on the county, it might be out of date. Where, like, I have a couple properties right now that, they still say the last guy owns it, right? And I'm like, no, if you call the county, it really is me. It'll say Harbor Trust or, Matt Forbes. So that's one side, right? Is do they own the property? And then the other is, like, do you sort of know, like, and trust the person who's doing it? Because when if you picked up one of those Punta Gorda lots, right, I'm going to sell it to you on a land contract. Right? Meaning I still have the deed, right? It's still in my name. Now you have legal rights to the property. We're going to draw up a contract between my lawyers and you, right? So you can go do what you want with the property within reason, right? You can't go build a house until it's paid off, that kind of a thing, but you control it legally, right? But you got to make sure that I control it legally too. And so we encourage all of our buyers to, get in contact with the county because we want it to be on the up and up, right?
Yeah. And just for clarification, once it is all paid off, it's theirs. There's no balloon payment or anything.
No, like that. No. And again, that's one where I know people who do it that way, and I'm like, that's crap, because what you're going to do is you're going to say to somebody, yeah, it's $150 a month, and then at the end you owe me $25,000, and in your heart they're never going to pay that. They're not going to have that money. Right. So the way that we work is it's whatever the price is for the month. If it's $150 a month, it's $150. There's a $10, surcharge on there to have all the banking stuff work because we ACH your account. And then there's whatever the taxes are. And so those three things combine for a monthly payment. And that's it. At the end, I have 30 days. I go record whatever you want for the deed, right? The deed titling, you get to tell me how you want it deed titled. I record it with the county. They send you the deed. And then you got to start paying them the taxes instead of me. And that's it. Like this is a big thing in this industry. I don't want you to default. This is not my full-time job, right? This is like a side hustle. And I think it's a really great business to be, and I really like it, right? But I don't want you to default because it's a pain in the butt, right? Now I got to go remarket. I got to do all these things, and you're going to lose money on the deal, and I don't want that. So it's really critical to us and our company that you love your land, right? That this is something that you're happy with. And frankly, a lot of people end up paying it off early, because we don't charge interest. It's like some people look at that and they go, well, then why would I ever pay you? I'm like, well, I would agree. Like it's 0%. Dave Ramsey would love that, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they want that ownership. They want to say like, no, this is mine. I mean, I had a woman call me yesterday. She goes, what's my balance? And I'm like, I don't know, give me 2 minutes. It's $16,127.54. She goes, great. I'm going to send you a check. And I'm like, okay, you want to give me $16,000? Sure. No problem. Right. I'll go once I have that and the cash is in the bank, I'll go record it with the county. You'll have the deed next week. Congratulations. You own the property.
Are there any stipulations if you do buy some of this land? Sometimes you can get land real cheap at a county auction, but it might be in a flood zone. And then now you have to spend, $5,000 to $15,000 and up in a certain amount of time. And again, most people, especially now, will be like, wait, I could buy the land for $500, but I can't get it out of a flood zone, says the city. So is that ever come into play?
Yeah, like I own 2 properties in Florida right now that are in a flood zone. So we say it right on the website, like this is it's in a 1% flood zone. So it should flood every, 1 out of every 100 years, right? When we talk to the neighbor and the neighbor's like, my house has been here for 25 years, hasn't flooded yet. We're like, okay, right? So the question is, what do you want to do with the property, right? You want to go build your permanent house? Flood zone's probably not your best bet. You want to come down and be in an RV for, 2 weeks a year and drive down to Florida? Probably a good idea because it's cheaper than everywhere else, right? So you got to think through that, and you do need to do your due diligence and understand, what you're buying, right? Now, the tax lien is a whole other kettle of fish, right? So in Colorado, for example, people will look like what we do, and they'll sell you tax lien properties. Now they buy them super cheap from the county. There's just that little tiny caveat that the person who lost it to the government has 7 years to pay that fee and then take the property back, and you're completely out of your investment. Oh, so except for that, it's a great investment. But they don't tell you that. Now, that doesn't happen almost ever, right? But if the person you're talking to isn't disclosing that, that's an issue, right? So there's a lot of these little, gotchas that are sort of out there, and it really depends on, who you're buying it from. Right. I don't do any of the tax lien ones. Like I consider doing it and then just being, again, super upfront and saying, okay, you have a 7-year note, just so you know, this is a tax lien property, which means for the next 7 years, that guy could take that property back. Now, if that were to be the case, I would be obligated to refund you all your money. So you would be protected. I'm actually the one at risk, in that scenario. And after the 7 years is up, then you're going to pay me, and then that issue is gone because it's hit at 7 years. But we don't get into it because I can just go get property that isn't that. Do I make less money doing that? I do. And do I care? I don't. It's a lucrative business. Like I'm not a charitable organization, right? I mean, I'm a business. I'm here to make money too, but I do it in a way where the average person with like an average income, you can go own a couple acres. You can go do it.
Definitely. And folks have to know, the difference between a tax lien and tax deed and find out what the states, what your rules are in the states. As far as, here's a personal question. Mm-hmm. Your company owns how much land, and in your own personal portfolio, how much? Because I could see like, hey, I don't want to sell this. I want to keep this one for myself. So like, how do you balance that out?
It was hard in the beginning because I'm like, this 53 acres in Texas, I don't want to sell this. I went out there. I'm like, it's gorgeous. There's nobody here. Like, I want this. And after a while, if you've done this long enough, it is literally, it's a piece of paper. That's how I treat it. It's a deed that I own. It's just a piece of paper. and I'm going to buy it from somebody else, and I'm going to flip it to, another party, right? So like my own portfolio of land is everything I haven't sold yet, minus, like my house that I actually live on. Now I do have a couple of parcels where I'm like emotionally attached to them, and I really, really like them. So I don't sell them, and I kind of keep them on the side. And I tell myself, and I tell my wife, it's because they're going to appreciate, like we're going to make more money on, this appreciation. But really what it is I like them, and I buy them pretty cheap. So, it's okay if you keep a few of these things. It's not really the end of the world, right? But I do know plenty of people who end up building a portfolio after a decade of doing this of, 20, 30, 40, 50 properties where they're like, yeah, I don't want to sell these. And I'm like, no, it's just a piece of paper. You're never going to go out there, right? You're never going to go visit all 50. So pick the top 5 you like and sell the rest. I mean, you're not making money if you don't sell them.
Do you know if there's any way, we'll use the Punta Gorda as an example, but you have various properties that, we saw stoplights and you see neighbors just around the corner. If you buy that plot of land, can they force you, later on to build on it? If you say, look, I'm just kind of holding this until the right time. Maybe I want to build, maybe I want to sell, but can you be forced to, you need to build something? Because I've seen that in Lubbock, Texas, where if you bought a certain land somewhere, you had to get out of flood zone and you had to do something with it. You just couldn't sit on it.
Yeah. So that's more of like housing developments where they're like, okay, we are, as a county, as a city, we are going to take this plot of land and we're going to sell it to somebody. And they promise that they're going to go build houses because as a city, we want more housing, right? We want the taxable income. We want all of that. Right. And so that does happen if you are more doing infield lots that are closer to cities, right? Cities want to grow. The stuff we have doesn't generally fall into that category or ever. But the stuff we have, like in Florida, it does have restrictions, right? So there are places in Florida. I've got some lots in Port Charlotte, for example, beautiful lots, power, water, the whole 9 yards, like they're right there. But you can't put an RV on it. They won't let you. You can't build a tiny house. They won't. Maybe you can't do a tiny house, but you can't do like a mobile home. Like they won't allow that. They have developed this, this chunk of land for houses. And those are, 0.2 acres, 0.23 acres. And so there's only so much of a house you can build, right, on that lot. But that's what they're looking for. Now, in that area, you might look at that and go, yeah, okay, I don't really want to be there. But at the same time, guess who just moved in up the street? Home Depot, Kroger, right? Like in 10 years, if that huge area, and we're talking about thousands of parcels, if that has 20% houses on it now, in 10 years, it might have, 35 or 40% houses on it, which means the property value is going to go up dramatically. And that's what's going on when you get closer, right? Those Punta Gorda ones, like I would imagine that, that most of those are going to end up being houses, right? Over the next, 10, 15, 20 years. Right. A lot of the people who buy those properties don't live in Florida. They live in New England and they're all snowbirds. And they're like, okay, so let me get this straight. For $200 a month, I can just go have a property. When I'm ready to retire, I could have 0.23 acres in Florida and build a house. Like, sure, here, take my money. Here you go. I'm like, that's exactly what you can do.
But they can't necessarily force you to build. There's no stipulation for, at least let's say for Punta Gorda, where they say you just have an empty lot, like you own it, you need to do something with it. There's no nothing in the contract saying you have to build.
No, not to my knowledge in the Punta Gorda ones that we have. Again, that's a very well laid out plan with the city, right? Where they're like, okay, we're going to develop these 150 acres into X size lots, right? And they're going to have a couple of tiers of these lots. And we want houses up in the next 5 years, right? And that's the deal. Like, that's what we're going for. These are just more laid out by whoever bought them and then subdivided them and put in roads and electric and in the whole 9 yards, right? I mean, getting electric, if you're going to build, it's expensive. It's really expensive. Like I get the question all the time. All right, so this property in Oregon is gorgeous. It's 5 acres. It's wooded. Like it's my dream. can I build a house there? And I'm like, you could, but you don't want to, right? Because the electric is, 3/4 of a mile away. You got to go put in like 6 poles. You're going to go spend $45,000 in putting in electric. You're going to spend a lot more just running power to your house than you are on the actual property itself. Right. And so, some people don't care, but that's the kind you have to start with the end in mind, right? Why am I buying this land? Am I a prepper and I want to be able to bug out? Like, that's a thing. Some people do that. Do I want to go vacation there? And I don't really care about any of these rules. Like, that's not a big deal. Do I just want to own property? Like, I have that urge. I rent in the city. I want to own something, right? What is the reason? Or am I buying for appreciation? I don't care what the rules are, as long as I make money on the deal. Like, I'm an investor, or, lately, I see where the stock market is going. I don't want to be in there. What can I buy now that's going to hold value? Right. And, land's a great asset for that. Right. So you got to figure out why you want to buy the property and what you long-term want to do with it. Right. And then, you see something you like, you either talk to me or my wife, or, we have a sales assistant, and we try to figure out what you want and why you want it, and then try to help steer you into the right property. Because otherwise, you bail out after 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or a year or two. And we don't want that. It's bad for everybody.
And so you were talking about, when the value rises, we're new to Florida. We were in Seattle before that. And we saw that, there was a couple, a nurse, and the guy was a teacher. And they actually were having to sell their home because when they bought their home, it was, in their price range. Now their home is valued over $2 million and they can't afford the property tax.
Can't afford the taxes. Yeah.
So
that sucks.
The taxes, we know taxes are going to be guaranteed and always going to go up. But on the average house, what are the taxes for these type of properties?
Florida, they are like $40 a month. Right. Okay. But you go out west, we're talking like the stuff in Texas. It's like, I sold a 5-acre lot in Texas. I think the taxes were 88 cents a month. You're like, well, it's in the middle of nowhere. There are no services. It's not like you're getting anything for your 88 cents. You can't even buy a Coke for 88 cents. Right. So it all depends on where you are. Like the stuff in the mountains in Colorado, I want to say those are like $20 a month, but we're not talking it's, $4,000 because you have a house, right? We're talking raw, undeveloped land. So it's going to be taxed at a very low basis because it's just dirt at the end of the day. I mean, trees and all that, but it's really just dirt, so that, that couple in Washington, like I feel horrible that they would have to sell their house. At the same time, I bet they're fairly well set up for life now that their house probably went up from a couple $100,000 to $2 million. Like, it sucks that you'd have to move 100%. But if somebody came in and said, hey, Matt, your house costs X, I'm going to give you X times 15. Okay. Take my, here. Okay. Yep. Do I get 30 days to move? Oh, I do. Okay. I'm out. Bye. Thanks everybody. Like, I have 4 kids. Okay. We're moving. Where are we moving to? Don't care. Let's go. I'm out. So I know not everybody feels that way, but I'll take $2 million for my house today. If anyone wants it, it's now for sale. I had no idea.
My wife and I got married in Springfield, Massachusetts, where we lived after college and all of that. What part of New England, Massachusetts are you in?
So I'm in Southern Mass, about an hour south of Boston.
Okay.
Yeah. But I know. I've been out to Springfield a bunch. Yeah.
Okay, so you're like closer to the Cape then.
Yeah, I'm actually, oddly, I'm further south than the Cape, right? So I'm sort of right on the water, but right on the border of Rhode Island.
Okay.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, you go up 20 minutes from where I live, and, there's like lots of houses, and it's New England, so it's fairly dense population. There's like cows all around me right now. There's just, we live in a farm land. It's weird. It won't be like that forever, but, my town put in, you have to own, I want to say 1.5 acres or 2.5 acres to build a house. And so it's quote, a right to farm community, which is awesome. So there's a lot of farms, there's a lot of farmers, both dairy and corn. And it's a great, it's just a good place to live.
And this being a side hustle, you know, everyone's probably like, Kellen, ask him what he really does because his name is Forbes. He
Yeah,
might not have
right.
to do anything.
Ah, yes. The name Forbes used to get you a good hotel room when you went to New York City. That's what my dad used to tell me. He used to check in. His name was Stuart Forbes. He would check in as S. Forbes back when like Steve Forbes was running for president, like right around that time frame. So he
Yeah.
would go to the city and whatever with all of his friends, and he would get like a penthouse, and they would all get like second floor rooms, right? No, but I'm an enterprise sales guy for a tech company out in California. And so I work from my house. I love my company. I don't want to quit, even though I probably should just to do this. But yeah, so I'm sort of in sales. It's kind of the same mode for what I do. I just sort of help people understand how to go to market in a B2B setting. And yeah.
Man, that's I'm still laughing, chuckling off the Forbes story because I'm like,
I
you
wish.
RM Forbes, and I could just imagine, because people would do that for like reservations. I remember '90s going to New York restaurants, and you couldn't get into certain places, but I'm calling for so and so to book. So,
oh yeah, dude, my dad used that. He worked on Wall Street in New York for a time. And so he would do that all the time. Like part of his job was entertaining, big ticket customers. So every time he had a reservation, it was just S Forbes, and he would get in anywhere he wanted. It was like cheating, right? But I get that question all the time. They're like, "Wow, Forbes, like, are you related?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's why I work like 3 different jobs. You bet. That's why. Yeah, of course. That's why I have a side hustle, just for fun."
Well, there's a documentary. It's old now, but it was on Blue Bloods, and even Ivanka Trump was in it. And it had folks who had no, they didn't have money problems, but they just wanted to live kind of normal lives because they were like, this life is BS. It's so shallow, and so you never know. So you guys never know who you're talking.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, those sound like problems I would like to have. That sounds lovely. I have so much money, I'm not sure what to do with myself. That sounds really good.
The next time you do a video thing, you should have like a butler come up and say, "No, I'm not a fool." When the butler comes and gives you something.
Like, more coffee, Jeeves. Thank you, sir. Yeah. I appreciate it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Now, with the success that you are having and that you're going to have, what's a community give back that you are doing or that you want to do in the future?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that. For now, I think our community give back, right, is actually the business itself, right? Just allowing people, because we don't do like a credit check or anything. Mm-hmm. I allow people, people come to me and they're like, "I just went through bankruptcy." And we're like, "Yeah, we don't care. Like, I don't care. You give me your word, you're going to pay, and we're good. And if you break your word, you're going to lose that money. So you should be, incentivized to keep paying. Like, that's the deal." So I like the business model we have. It's why I don't do a lot of cash flips, because I think it doesn't serve the community that I want to serve, right, ultimately. But, I think as the business gets bigger, right, we sort of need to do more. When we started out, we were really thinking we would do larger cash flips. Right. So buy a large piece of acreage for, 50 grand and sell it for 80 and make like real money. Right. Like, that's just not the world that we ended up playing in. And we were always saying, like, our town is, even though we're in Massachusetts, we have a very low tax rate, which is why a lot of people live here. But you have to fight for everything. You have to fight for every dollar that goes into the schools and all that. So we had always wanted to take a certain percentage of the business, right, and really just try to get the local community to where it ought to be, right? So I think as we get bigger, we're going to start getting into that more. But I like the fact that I can have that conversation with someone and say, "I don't really care. Like, you tell me you're going to pay, we're going to give this a go." Right. And I've had, and to be fair, like, I had a person who probably was 6-7 months in, and she called me and was like, "Listen, I lost my job. My world is upside down. I don't know what to do." And I'm like, "Well, you can do a couple things. Like, we can make it so that you don't have to pay for a few months. But really, do you want the property? And she's like, I don't. Like, I can't. Everything has changed. And I'm like, no problem. Here's a refund. Here you go. And she's like, excuse me? I'm like, what do I care? I'll go resell it to somebody else. Here's your money. Take care of your family. It's all good. And because I'm not a bank, I get to do stuff like that. And it's kind of fun, you know? So, you know, as a family company that actually owns the property, like we can do whatever we want to do, which sounds weird, right? But we can help people if they need it. So. Yeah.
Super cool. That is super cool. Now, do you have a list of people who come in like vultures? Hey, whoever defaults, we want to pick where they left off. You know, I could see, you know, people wanting to say, I'd love to be on that list because, you know, there are people always who want to vulture around when they.
Oh, yeah. I don't. So I don't have a default list, but nor do I get very many defaults. So I have friends in this business who get, you know, they've got 100 notes, right? And they've got 2 to 3 people who default like clockwork every month. And they're like, yep, just part of the business. I'll just resell it to somebody else. I'm like, I don't have that. Why don't I have that? And I, you know, other than just we try to do it a little bit differently, I don't really have that problem. Other than that, I've had 2 people default who were in the first like couple of months. So we're like, whatever. We have a 90-day guarantee. If you don't like your property, I'll just give you your money back. Like, you need to like your property. I don't do this full time, right? I don't have time to sit around and haggle with you and do all that. If you don't want it, take it. It's fine. Like, it's all good, right? And then I had like 2 other people default total, right? And one of them was that woman that I was telling you about, and that was just an easy, you know, refund, right? But yeah, I don't keep a list like that, right? Like I don't think it's not that I don't want to do business with those people, but right. Like I want you to love your land, right? That's the whole point of this.
Now, talk about haggling, how many people call you and say, you know, I know you said this was the price, but I have, like Dave Ramsey, cash, and Dave tells me cash is king.
Cash is king.
Yeah. So yeah. Do you haggle at all with the price on that?
If I think you're serious. Now, 100%, actually, no. 100% minus one guy. When people go like, hey, Matt, I know you want $28,000 for this property, but I'll give you 20 right now. 100% of them are full of shit. Like, it never works out. So if you call me and you say that to me, like, I'm going to think you're a joker all day long, right? I had one guy do that, and I needed money for a bigger property. So I was like, sure. Like, yeah, I'll cut you a huge break. And he was like, great, let's go to title right now. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, we'll do it. So if you want to pay cash, yeah. Like, you know, somebody saw this and they heard you and they were like, wow, those Punta Gorda lots, like, you know, he wants, I don't even know how much they are total, whatever it is, right? You know, 19 grand, 15 grand, 12 grand, I have no idea, right? But, you know, he wants 15, you know, like I'll give him, you know, 13 or 12. Like, I'd have a conversation about it. I'm not a masochist. I do like money. I'm a fan, right? But most of the time, people who do that almost never follow through. You know, I think they're just, you know, playing the game. But occasionally it happens. And if the timing is right, then I'll do it, right? Because I'm always, you know, all the money I make goes right back into buying more land, right? I know you had Mike with Profit First on, which is a tremendous book. Like, you're a business owner and you haven't read that book. Like, what are you reading? And so it changed me from putting all my money back in to not putting all my money back in. But yeah, I mean, like, I'll have a discussion if you're serious. Yeah, I don't care. Right. It's not like I'm not making good money. So.
Yeah. And I mean, you are doing like, you know, Tim Ferriss had wrote about with the 4-hour work week. It sounds like you've been doing that for a while. And I love to hear stories like that because, you know, companies, I think more people need to be working from home prior to COVID. I'm a big fan of that book as well.
Me too. 4-hour work week is right behind me. But, you know, I don't know how many people who are in, you know, corporate America, you know, watch this podcast who are working from home, but I talk to them every day for my regular job. And they're like, well, when we get back to the office, I'm like, whoa, Tiger. I'm sorry. Did you think your CFO is going to keep paying for that office space when you can completely run the business from home? Do you think he wants to go spend $120,000 a month on 3 floors in Boston? Because I'm going to go out on a ledge and say, like, dude, that ain't going to happen. Right? Like, he's like, no way, right? For a Zoom subscription and a little bit of extra cash for internet, he can probably save $2 million a year. Like, most of you aren't going to go back. You're going to stay at home because it's so much cheaper for the company.
We're actually proposing companies, and we have a whole plan. You guys, because some people, well, we want to feel like we're there. Virtual reality. Put on the goggles.
Sure.
If you want to be in an office setting, I personally, this is my office. My kids are doing their homeschool with their, teacher.
Right,
this is what I, always wanted, because I like my kids. I like my family. I like being around them. And the office has office politics, and I'm probably the worst person for that because I have an opinion.
We could hang out. I'm what you don't know about me is I'm actually 6'8", so I'm a giant, right? And so office politics.
Me too. Don't let me stand. I'm not really 6'8", but I feel
no, I really am. And I have the lungs and the yelling capacity to go right with it. And so I thought, when I took this job working from home 8.5 years ago, I didn't take the job originally. And I went to go work somewhere else. I'm like, no, I love this company. I got to do it. And I fought to get more money so I could go get like an office space somewhere. Cause I'm like, no way I can work from home. And my boss was like, yeah, no, we're not paying you more money so you can have an office. Like, work from your bedroom. And now that I've gotten used to it, it's been 8.5 years. It took probably a solid year to get used to it. I literally will never, ever in my life sit in traffic to go to an office where I have to BS with the wrong people, play nice, deal with all that crap, watch people spend all their money going to lunch, and really nobody gets a damn thing done. Like, never again, ever, as long as I live. I'll never do it. Because you get home, this, you get up, send your kids to school, have breakfast. My 4 kids are upstairs right now. Come down here and I work. Because what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
Sit around and look at Facebook all day? Like, no, I'm a sales guy. We're going to go make cold calls. We're going to go send emails. We're going to go make money. Let's go, people. And so I don't understand that culture of the office. I get why people think they need it. Dude, you don't need it. It's unnecessary. It's expensive.
And you have the perfect, it seems, podcast microphone and setup. I just want to know, when is the podcast coming, or have I missed it? And possibly, the YouTube, because I just see a niche for the podcast, a book, and a documentary, because you're doing business your way and it's authentic to you. And I love that, because at some point, it can't be about the money. It has to be that I enjoy doing this. I love it. So, when is all that coming about? Where should we be, taking?
So I learned this business from a guy named Mark Podolsky, right? And, some people go, oh, he's a guru. He's one of the, blah, blah. Like, dude, he's the most genuinely nice person I've ever met. And he taught me the business. I was like a student, right? I paid for it, but I was a student, and it just made sense to me. And I do kind of a podcast, but I do a thing on Wednesday or Thursday nights, because one of the other guys is a firefighter, and he's either on or off on a Wednesday or a Thursday. But we do a late night, talk about land investing and answer people's questions, and who cares? And we call it Nightcap. And I have 2 or 3 cocktails and pass out and go to bed and do it again the next day. So we do that. That's why I have this mic. But I haven't been doing it long enough. Mark's been doing this for like 18 years, 20 years. He's done like 10, 1,000, 15,000 land deals. Like, I would never, ever step on his toes ever and start doing it. Like, there are people who do it. I've seen people come through the program and then start their own thing, and like, I'm the expert. Here's the MBA course. Here's this. And you're like, nah, come on. Come on. You've been doing this for 8 seconds. Like, you don't know what you're doing. I had a guy, I sold him his first deal. And he's like, yeah, I'm the expert. I'm like, whoa, sunshine. I remember you when you didn't know anything. Like, are you kidding me? And now you're charging people? I love the model of doing a podcast and giving and constantly pushing information for people, like what you're doing. I love that model. But you got to be careful about who the people are that you're listening to, and do they really know what they're talking about? Or is this something that they learned 8 seconds ago and now they're trying to, pawn off some $2,000 program on you, right? So.
Well, that's the times that we're living where you have, 2 weeks ago, interviewed a 13-year-old millionaire.
I saw that.
And he genuinely, doesn't really even, it's not about the money, it's about the work again. But then you'll have somebody who will be a, 43-year-old, not millionaire, but say they're an expert in stocks and a course they have to sell you because they took a course. And that's where I'm always a student personally, because I'm always learning,
Yep.
A book a week is my goal.
Yep.
And we're just learning, but everybody now is an expert. And that's why you see on any news or anything, people are just talking and you're like, wait, they're arguing with the doctors who spent, an additional 16 years in school. I don't get it.
My uncle happens to be the chief of surgery at Yale Hospital in Connecticut, Yale New Haven Hospital. And I was talking with him and he was talking to me about this guy who was like, they were in some sort of public forum. And he's like, well, here's who I am. And let me give you my opinion because I see this stuff. And this was really early in COVID. Like nobody cared, right? Like it was that or like, there's some from China, whatever. And he's like, listen, he's like, we're terrified in the hospital because we don't really know what it is. Like you guys all think like it's all worked out. We have no idea. And this guy started arguing with him. He's like, I have been a surgeon for 40 years. I have done things no other surgeon has ever done because they're too risky. Are you sure you read a book about like diseases yesterday and you're the expert? Like that's the stuff. So for me, for land, like I could teach you how to do land. It's not hard. It's complicated, but it's not hard, right? But if you really want to learn from the expert, it's not me, it's Mark. You go look them up and, you pay the money and you go do it. And like anything else, and this, right? It's the people who succeed at any of these niches are just people who do it until they get it right. And they fail and fail and fail and fail and fail and fail and fail. And then all of a sudden it clicks and they're like, yeah, like the overnight success. Like, yeah, you didn't see the last 3 years where it was a total complete disaster, where they questioned themselves and everything. And we went through that in land. I've been doing this for 3 years and the first year and a half was ugly. Very, very ugly.
So I can hear somebody saying, Kellen, but I didn't hear that he's an agent or he's a broker. And I haven't heard that, can I bring an agent in? Because I've read so many books that say you'll get a better deal if you have an agent. So are agents involved or how does that process work when someone wants to, purchase?
Yeah. The answer is I'm not an agent and I'm not a broker. I'm the landowner. And the problem with real estate agents are they think they know everything, and they do for like, if you're going to go buy a house, you go get an agent. But when it comes to raw land that costs $12,000, it might as well be a mission to Mars. They have no idea how the transaction works. They have no clue what's going on. And because they don't know, they will just tell you, don't go do this. It sounds like a scam. And it is like, you would be shocked at how many agents I have to talk to where the person's like, I really want to buy it, but my best friend's an agent. And the agent comes on the phone and they're like, well, harumph, you need a harumph. Like you need an agent. You must have a broker and harumph. And I'm like, listen, sunshine, I own the property. And you know that because you're smart enough to go look on the assessor's website. So did you? And they go, yeah. And I go, okay, I can sell anything I own, anything. I can go sell my car. I can go sell my house. What I can't go do is I can't go sell your house because then I'm an agent. Then I'm a broker. And that's a different ball game. And so after a 25-minute discussion where they start like barking at me in the beginning, at the end, they're like, I may want to invest. And I'm like, okay, that sounds really good. But you have to take them through this journey. And it's just an education of like how this particular niche works. And again, the reason they've never heard of it is every time they get a call, which is, by the way, is never, and they hear somebody go, yeah, I own this property and it's in the middle of nowhere and I'd like you to list it. They're like, how much? I'm like, we're going to list it for $19,000. And they're like, so 19,000 divided by 0.015. Yeah, I'm going to go sell the $500,000 house next door. Thanks. I'm good. And so they don't know the market. So to be clear, I'm not a broker. I'm not an agent. I'm the owner. right?
Okay,
And
but
that's the
you
key.
will talk to somebody's agent if they
Yeah,
feel like for whatever comfort reason,
yeah,
you need to bring the agent.
yeah. That's fine. But like, am I going to pay your agent to sell my property? No, no. There's not enough money in the deal. That's why they're not in the deal to begin with, right? But I'm happy to talk them through how I do what I do, right? I mean, if you sign up and I don't know if you saw Danielle's whole video, but we create a land contract and a promissory note. This is legal stuff. This isn't a joke, right? You have rights to your property. I mean, you are on a land contract. As long as you pay me on time, it's yours, right? You can
Yeah,
do what you want with it. Short of, again, you can't go build a house because otherwise you own the house, but I own the land. Like, no, it doesn't make any sense.
yeah. I think people are worried, like if, even if it was 2 generations ago, that there could be some back tax owed back in the, gold mining days that only the agent could find. And
Assessor. I could, dude, from what I know from land, I could figure out where you live. I could go get an aerial map. I can find out how much your mortgage is. I could probably go get an inside view of your house from an old realtor.com video. Dude, I can go find everything. It's all on the internet, right? So again, you go to that assessor's site, right? And you check it out, who owns the land. And then there's a link 99 times out of 100 to the tax. And they'll show you what do they owe in back taxes. And they're right there. It's almost always online. And if you're not 100% sure, you just call the county. There are people, and this is like all they do. They answer the phone and they just look information up on their own website and they give you the information. And then it's coming from the county. And you do want to do this stuff. It's not a joke. I mean, you're buying a piece of actual property, right? You want to make sure that there's not that much taxes that are owed. You want to know, right? The people I know who are serious, they call me up and they go, I want to buy this property. And I go, okay, great. And they go, but you owe $184 in back taxes for last year. So what happens? And I'm like, well, I will pay the taxes. I have to, or I lose the property, right? And when I deed it over to you, I warrant that I will have paid all back taxes on the property, right? In a warranty deed. That's a special kind of deed, right? It's not a treasurer's deed. There's all sorts of these kinds of deeds out there, but I only sell things on a warranty deed, meaning that I accept that this property is what it is. There's no clouded title to it. There's nothing interesting going on. There's none of that stuff. It doesn't exist. And if it does, I'm on the hook for it, right? That's what a warranty deed does, right? So we only sell on those, but you should go do your due diligence on these properties for sure.
And my final question, because of the climate that we're in and borders being closed and, coming recently from Seattle, Washington, and being from California and seeing how foreign investment is buying up everything. I mean, the biggest building in Seattle is owned by foreign, China.
Yeah. Yep.
How does, that investment not just come and say, hey, you want this and you're selling it for so cheap, I'm going to buy it because we have the cash, no matter how we got it, manipulating currencies and all that other stuff we hear in the news. How do you stop foreign investment from just buying all this land?
Well, part of me said if somebody came and said, I want to buy everything you own and everything you get your hands on, I would say, okay, that sounds lovely. I'll sell it all. But the reality is, there's either big private equity firms who come in and they like just take over a real estate niche, right? Whether that niche is multifamily, gone, right? You can buy Bs, B minuses, turn them into B pluses. That still exists, but that whole market is flooded. So, you're out. Or storage. Private equity came in and foreign investment came in. They bought up all the storage or all the nursing homes. Like, they've come in because these are big ticket items, right? Where there is an appreciation play, right? And they see it and it makes sense. It doesn't really make sense to buy 0.23 acres in Punta Gorda, Florida. It's just not the same thing. They could come in and say, like, we're going to buy everything, but it's so fragmented, this little niche that we're in, that I don't ever think that they really could. I mean, there are some big dogs out there, who own, like I know one guy who owns, I don't even know, maybe 100 to 300 square miles in Texas. And he just constantly is He sells them. And unfortunately, his model is he doesn't think you're going to pay, right? He sells them for about the same price I sell them for, but he charges interest. And so he actually ends up selling for about double. If you did the math, it's double. And most of his stuff comes back to him at some point, and then he has to go like resell. So there are players that are like that. And I could see foreign investment coming in and being like, yeah, I'll give you 50 million for all that property. And then they run the business. But that's not really what they're looking for, right? They're looking to come in and buy, 40, 200 unit multifamily properties at a time, right? And just buy and hold and wait for that appreciation to come in, do small improvements, that kind of a thing. But in our market, it's so complicated and there's so many moving pieces that they'd have to put in a big infrastructure here in the US just to handle it. And while the margins are good, the margins are excellent in what we do, it's on such a small number that it's like irrelevant. You're like, wow, I'm going to double my money or I'm going to triple my money. That's awesome. I triple my money, but it takes 10 years. So it's like, it's not that exciting. I got to go do that 300, 400, 500 times, right? To really, really be, something that would be attractive. And almost nobody does that because it's so much work. Eventually you have enough loans where you can, and enough notes where you can quit your job and you sort of just do this full time on the side. And it's more of a freedom thing than it ever is I'm going to be worth $1 billion kind of a thing.
Okay. Well, no, this is great information. Will there be a book, a documentary? No book, no
no book, no documentary, no course. Maybe, but I don't think I'm the guy, right? I'm like just a humble little, you want 5 acres in Colorado? I'm your guy, right?
Yeah, I think everyone has a business and a book in them, and that you have a personality that people will be like, yes, I want to hear it from him because he's not pressuring me to sell. He's not telling me I'm a loser if I don't get his course, because there's this model of go through our funnel system and learn how to make money residual, and you're like, gosh, shut up.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I would be. I don't know. Like I have allegiance to that guy, Mark. Mm-hmm. I have allegiance to that guy. Like he set me free. He did it. His name is Mark Podolsky. He's called the Land Geek. He's the guy. He's the guy. He's that guy. He's not the guy who pressures you, by the way, but he is the guy that's been doing it for so long. It's ridiculous. So I think there is a book in me, Kellen, by the way, and there is, but it's not about land. It's about actually how to sell B2B. And it's, let's just cut through the red tape and talk about what actually matters in that space, which is more of my actual job. But I don't think I would do it. Maybe if Mark retired, I don't know. I feel like I'd be stepping on his toes, man. I like that guy too much.
I definitely get that. And maybe there's, something he's not tapping into, or he'll even join you. But I get the, you're loyal. And it's like, he's doing that. So let me push his stuff and push you to him. I just know that there's the work is plentiful. The labor is few. Oops, almost knocked over a light. And and that this is something I believe should be taught in the middle schools and high schools, because it would allow somebody who's not making a lot of money. And I'm going to go back and talk to my wife and say, I want to have people follow this journey, or have one of my influencers that have it follow the journey of buying it, paying for it, and explaining to the folks who we mentor or coach or whatever you want to call it. Because it's something that's unique and things that can make you a lot of money, but it's not about the money. I love.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. On the things that are taught in school, like, I don't know if you've ever played, cash flow, but I play cash flow with my kids. He's now, my oldest is 14, turned 14, 2 days ago. But when he was 9, we got a 9-year-old who would be, sitting at our house, and so one of our friends, or, I run the Cub Scouts, so, somebody's in the house and they say something and he goes, no, that's wrong. That's not an asset. That's a liability. And the adult's like, you're 9. What do you know? And he's like, well, no, and he would start explaining assets and liabilities to adults who didn't understand. And I'm like, Patrick, you can't like they're lost, bud. They would have to go play the game and like go actually want to learn what financial like freedom actually means and how this works. They don't get it. And he couldn't understand that concept. So for years, like people would come to my house and he would start and I'd be like, nope, we'll play cash flow later. But have you ever played? You ever played the game?
I've played that, but our game is Act Your Wage by Dave Ramsey. My kids are tired of that one because they're all, they're very similar. Like,
yeah, they are. Yeah.
You need to get out of debt, and it teaches you assets versus liabilities. Yeah. So yeah, I've played that, and I'm the king of like Monopoly, but I love those games because they put you in situations that you're like, I never wanted to be here. I never want to have 3 kids. I have 2. I never want to have 3 kids and only making 40,000. How am I supposed to make this work? But that's a real life scenario for many.
Yeah, I think for most people, that's and you sort of wake up and you're 38, right? And you're like, I got 2 kids. I make more than the average, right? 40 grand's a little higher than the average out there, but not by a lot. And like, it's damn hard to survive on $40,000. So what do? You go back and you get a second job or you're working for somebody else. It's like, no, man, that is not, you need to understand what it is to be financially free and then how to get there. And then you got to go do the hard thing, right? You got to go do the work, pick a niche. I don't care what the niche is. The niche is irrelevant, right? I picked land, Danielle picked, protecting houses, preservation. Doesn't matter what you pick. You got to pick something and you got to stay committed and you got to say, this is 3 years. I'm 38. I'm going to be 41 before I give up, right? That's my benchmark. And I'm going to work at this every day for 3 years. And if I can get to 3 years, I probably would have replaced that 40 grand income long ago. Right. And that's what people have to do. And they're not willing to do it. It's like, well, yeah, I could, but I'm going to go like Netflix and chill. You're like, yeah, that doesn't pay the bills. Cancel that subscription. Go read a book. Go get a course. Get after it. Or you're going to be 3 years is coming either way. Either you're going to be financially free in 3 years or you're not. The only other option is you're dead. So let's leave that one out of it. So you might as well go put the time in. Then in 3 years, be financially free. 40 grand isn't a ton of money to displace with a side hustle if you're really working it and you find a good mentor and you find a good niche. 40 grand is not that hard, but you got to commit. I think that's what people don't know. They're like, well, I'm going to watch Netflix. I'm going to go back to work tomorrow. And you're like, yeah, the guy who's getting rich ain't you. It's your boss's boss's boss, the owner of that company. So I'm with you 100%. It bothers me. I try to get all of my friends, they're all in the same boat. They all work for a living. They all probably have $1.77 in the bank. And if something bad happens, they're in real trouble. Right. And they don't want to hear it from me anymore. So.
With that, we can do a mic drop because that just gave you, that's what this platform is to do, to show you how entrepreneurs start, sustain, and succeed in their business so you can too. Matt, I thank you for coming on. I definitely going to be talking about you and your ears will be ringing.
Appreciate it.
You guys like, share, subscribe. You have been blessed. You've actually gotten a game overload. Thank you.